there was an old Indian that once said only the American government would be wise enough to think that cutting a piece off of the bottom of the blanket and sewing it on the top would change how long the blanket is. And some of us forgot to set our clocks ahead last night, which is what he was talking about. Daylight savings time seemed to the native Indian a strange kind of thing, to set your life on a clock instead of on nature. Our psalm says that the heavens declare the glory of God. And I can remember as a kid at Griffith Planetarium, they had a big Foucault pendulum that came down in this great big circle, and they had little pegs set up along the side. The pendulum had a pin at the bottom, and as it swung, and as the earth turned, it would swing around too, and it took a whole day for it to get all the way around. But I would stand there and watch and see when it was going to knock the next peg over. The heavens declare the glory of God. And as our song, our hymn that we just sang said in the last verse, when evening has come and the day is nearly done, we are standing at the river and we're watching, waiting for the night. When I was at sea, it was always like that. At evening, when the sun had gone down, you stand there with your sextant and you're waiting for the stars to come out. And you look at the clouds and wonder what the night will bring as you sail on into the night. Sometimes sleeping through parts of it. Sometimes nobody on watch looking. You have your light on, but you haven't seen a ship for days, and you think you're going to be all right. You look at the clouds and you wonder, is it going to be a night like it is right now? Is it going to be a pleasant, calm night? Or is something going to happen in the middle of the night that will cause our, as they say, days and days of boredom, followed by moments of sheer terror. Sheer terror when the squall hits in the middle of the night and you stumble up to get clothes on if you have time, or to get out there and release the sheets and change the course into the wind and so on. Sometimes we don't do it so well. I can remember once we were not in the nighttime, but in the daytime down below having lunch, and it was off the coast of Mexico coming north, and a squall hit and rain. We could hear it coming down, and I was busy trying to put on my boots and my raincoat and stuff, and Shirley ran out and released the wind vane and saved the boat while I was getting ready to do it and seeming like man. Be ready. That's what the Ten Commandments are about. They're not laws and rules that one is supposed to follow to be good, to be saved. St. Paul has lots to say about that, how the commandments and how the law, he called it the Torah, translated law, was so that we would not be able to fulfill it, so that we would rely only on God's mercy for our salvation. The Ten Commandments for Paul were a stumbling block. They were the way in which we would stumble so that we could be saved by grace, not by our own doing. Now, I think the Ten Commandments had a broader meaning than that. They were not just a law for the Jews, they were a way of life. All of those rules and things were a way of life, how they could move through life in relationship to God and relationship to each other, and in relationship to the other countries that always wanted to oppress them. How do you do that? How do you stay calm? How do you stay on course? How do you stay ready for the terror of the night? How do you do that? These are ways you can do that. These are ways. But by the time Jesus comes around to the temple, he's furious. He's angry about what's going on there. And he comes in and makes a whip of cords, and he drives out the cattle and the people and tips over the money. You can imagine the coins falling all over and people scrambling for those, and others wondering what's going on. You can imagine the chaos that he caused. Why didn't they just throw him out? Why didn't they? partly because they were thinking that maybe the Messiah has come. When the Messiah comes, things are going to change radically. And of course, a lot of people thought that Jesus was the Messiah. In John's Gospel, this is right at the beginning. He has come out of baptism in the Jordan. He has made wine at the wedding in Cana. He comes to the temple with his anger and his whip and his rage. Didn't he know that anger was one of the 7 deadly sins? Didn't he know that anger is really, or don't we know that anger is really an external action for an inward hurt and passion and sorrow? In John's Gospel, remember, Jesus was in the beginning with God when God created the heavens and earth. He was there with wisdom and Yahweh and was this pre-existent Son of God who now has come to earth and has that whole store of man's history and woman's history up to this point. What have they done to God's creation? What have they done to each other? Why are they still fighting? Why are they still worshiping idols? You know, when Moses came down with those tablets from Sinai, the people down there had been waiting 40 days or so for him to come down, and they decided they needed a god, this thunder on the mountain, and created a golden calf to worship. Moses threw the tablets down and broke them. He had to go back up the mountain and wait another 40 days and do it again. Get the tablets. Jesus is breaking it again. He's saying, you're doing it wrong. You know, there's all of these rules about sacrifice and how to worship God and everything. You gotta have animals, you gotta have the right coins, not ones with Caesar's engraving on it. All of those things became forefront to them. This is what they were doing instead of opening their hearts to God. This is what they were doing for their religion. Those of us who work so hard and are so gung-ho with our jobs, or so concerned about the economy or about the way the world is going, are not worshiping God the way He wants us to worship Him. First of all, you worship God, He says, and only God. No idols and no other things get in the way. In the temple, those other things had gotten in the way. They got in the way a long time before. Remember when the flood of Noah came, and the rainbow sign, the first covenant. The second covenant was, what was it? Jesus' baptism in the Jordan, the water covenant that God has come to us, and we don't have to do anything. Now here's the 10 Commandments. God comes to us with this covenant, and what do we do with them? We don't worship the covenant. We worship God.